Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, talk of annexations divides the government. Houses of worship, restaurants, and bars all begin preparations to open their doors, and stars from the hit Broadway show Hamilton join 100 international artists for an online performance you do not want to miss. It's now been 24 hours since the inauguration of our brand new unity government in Israel, and all 35 new ministers now getting started in their respective roles. The 36th and final portfolio yet to be assigned until after the coronavirus crisis is over. But all anyone can seemingly talk about is annexations, which Prime Minister Netanyahu alluding to in his inaugural speech.
צעד זה לא ירחיק את השלום, צעד זה יקרב אותו. כי את השלום אפשר לבסס רק אל האמת. והאמת היא, וכולם פה יודעים אותה, שמאות אלפי המתיישבים ביהודה ושומרון, אחינו ואחיותינו, יישארו תמיד במקומותיהם, כחלק מכל הסדר קבע לשלום.
Netanyahu, long pushing for extending sovereignty to Jewish enclaves in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, plans to introduce possible annexations before the Knesset as soon as July 1st. Co-Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benny Gantz, however, is avoiding annexation talk. But today, speaking at a ceremony for the handing off of the foreign ministry, Gantz's new number 2 and newly minted foreign minister, Gabi Ashkenazi, is supporting calls for annexations in accordance with the United States' peace plan.
התוכנית הזאת אבן דרך משמעותית. הנשיא טראמפ מציב בפנינו הזדמנות היסטורית לעצב את עתידה של מדינת ישראל ואת גבולותיה לעשרות השנים הבאות.
On the other hand, repeating criticisms used to interrupt Prime Ministers Netanyahu and Gantz yesterday, opposition lawmakers again rejecting the idea of working towards peace by extending Israel's borders. Likewise, members of the international community, including Europe and the Arab world, attacking the plan. Just days ago, King Abdullah II of Jordan speaking with German media, warning that annexations would mean the death of the Palestinian Authority and will lead to chaos and the escalation of violence, adding that Jordan will look into its options should Jerusalem follow through. Foreign Minister Ashkenazi reiterates, however, that the plan will be advanced responsibly to maintain Israel's peace agreements and strategic interests.
אני רואה חשיבות רבה בחיזוק הקשרים האסטרטגיים עם מדינות השלום, מצרים וירדן. הן בעלות ברית חשובות להתמודדות עם האתגרים באזור.
Meanwhile, the plan for annexations is but one of many that opposition lawmakers are criticizing. Joining us to address them, the president of the Jerusalem-Washington Center, Gideon Israel. Gideon, thanks for being with us. Now, first, with 35 new ministers, soon to be 36, government bloat is still among the top concerns against the new unity. And speaking today to the media, opposition leader Yair Lapid again called out how we now have 3 times the normal number of ministers. So what was the benefit of dividing certain important ministries into smaller offices rather than creating new positions or just enforcing the original limited number?
This is not a government that really anyone wanted. So on the one hand, you had to appease the people in blue and white who were making what they saw as a sacrifice in joining the government, and at the same time, Prime Minister Netanyahu had to appease the people in the Likud who had supported him over the past year. And just the reality in Israel is that being a minister is much more prestigious than being a member of Knesset, and therefore, a lot of members of Knesset wanted a seat around the table of the government, and therefore, one of the only ways to do that and to appease everyone and to bring as many people as possible into the government was to break up ministries and sort of create new ministries and create new jobs that would allow everyone to be happy and to sit around the table.
But is the same true for ministries that, really have very little power or no power that we really even understand? Because there are some ministries that were just made up and whose jobs we don't yet even know. Those are still more prestigious than being a Knesset member?
Well, I think there's 2 kinds of new types of ministries that were made. One is sort of breaking off a piece of an existing ministry and giving the authorities to this new minister. And what comes with that is also the budget, meaning this new minister with less authority has control over a certain budget, which gives that person authority. And then there were other things. Specifically, there was a ministry made up that will be the liaison between the government and the Knesset. That is unclear what authority there is, and maybe the only prestige is that they are called a minister and they sit around the table for the cabinet meetings.
All right, and my final question, really quick. Who do you think is going to have final say in some of these vital decisions between Netanyahu and Gantz? Because right now we're hearing some, particularly about annexations, differences between their two approaches to that. How do you think that's going to work out with the future government?
The first thing is that in the platform of the Blue and White Party, they talk about disengagement from the Palestinians, but holding on to the settlement blocks, the Jordan Valley, and United Jerusalem. What Netanyahu is talking about is applying sovereignty to all those places, plus all the settlements, even that are outside of the what's called the major settlement blocks. However, in the agreement that was signed between Blue and White and between Likud, Netanyahu is obligated to bring this issue to the cabinet, have a discussion, meet with Gantz, ask for his advice. But at the end of the day, according to the agreement, there does not have to be agreement between Blue and White and Likud on this issue, as long as it's done after July 1st and with the agreement of the Americans.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out in the actual operations. Thank you, Gideon. Now, it might not be too much longer until Israel's once bustling restaurant scene is once again in full swing, with their coronavirus shutdown orders set to be lifted by the end of the week. An agreement struck between the economy and health ministries could see the culinary scene rebooted just in time for the coming Shavuot holiday next week. Tracy Alexander has more.
It's a confusing scene. Surf's up, but playgrounds are closed. School's back for summer, and despite the masks, social distancing seems, well, like a bit of an afterthought. And as for restaurants and cafes, well, they're sitting on the edge of their seats, waiting for the green light to reopen their doors, which could be in a matter of days. With current coronavirus regulations limiting eateries to just delivery and takeaway, bar owners and restaurateurs have for weeks begged the government to loosen restrictions and provide economic relief. Restaurants and cafes will still need to adhere to strict health measures should they open by week's end, but it's a welcome trend. As the number of new infections slows dramatically, so the easing of restrictions continues. Just 14 people diagnosed in the past 24 hours, and the death toll sits at 272. Meantime, this has been the scene at places of worship during the coronavirus restrictions. Prayers taking place outside of synagogues, mosques and churches, with devotees keeping that 2-metre distance, but government officials are weighing a framework for their reopening. After months of empty pews, worshippers could once again enter their houses of prayer, but with separated seats and a virus supervisor to ensure all health measures are followed. Restrictions at the Temple Mount, though, now in question. Israel's Supreme Court hearing a petition today to allow Jews to once again ascend the holy site, which has been shuttered to all worshippers during the pandemic. Now, the site is often a flashpoint for conflict between Jews and Muslims, since Jews revere the area around the Dome of the Rock due to its link to the First and Second Temples. But for the past 1,300 years, Muslims have worshipped the place where Prophet Muhammad is thought to have ascended to heaven. The two Israeli applicants petitioning for access now saying that if the Islamic religious authority is allowed to return, well, they should be able to as well. Also, lessons are being learned on the school front as classes reopen for Israeli students this week. A second teacher from the same school in the city of Rehovot has been diagnosed with coronavirus. It sent another 35 children into isolation just days after a school counsellor from the Navon school was found to be infected, seeing 52 students and some staff members sent back into quarantine. The school will now be shut until May 27.
Moving on, there are few people who haven't felt the pinch of stress piled on by the coronavirus pandemic. But in what's become quite literally a heartbreaking turn of events, you might recall the story about this man, Yuval Karmi, a falafel vendor who became a symbol of the economic toll of the virus in Israel. Remember this?
יש לי משפחה, יש לי ילדים בבית, אני לא יודע מה לעשות. אני בא לי לשרוף את עצמי, אני לא יודע מה לעשות.
Well, Karmi is now recovering in hospital after suffering a heart attack overnight, and his doctor says that it's directly related to the stress he's experienced over the past 2 months. Now, while Karmi received a lot of support after his interview, he says that it also brought out a dark side in the public who accused him on social media of putting on a show for the cameras to boost business. Thankfully, Karmi is now on the mend, though, and expressing his gratitude to the doctors who saved his life. Speaking of doctors, the coronavirus does not distinguish between individuals. It also attacks medical professionals. And one of the worst patients of the epidemic is the president of a volunteer doctors and paramedics organization. Eliber, United Hatzalah president, was between life and death for 33 days after contracting a coronavirus during a fundraising campaign in Miami. He's joining us now on Skype. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, how did you first get the virus, and did you have any thoughts on why you, of all people, are infected with this dangerous epidemic?
Well, I don't know. You know, this pandemic goes in a very mysterious way. I don't know how I contracted this terrible virus. I was in Miami, wonderful view, wonderful weather, everything was perfect. I was there for Purim, and the next day I felt fever, and everything went down from that moment. I had to go to the hospital and go into the ICU.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned that your medical condition quickly worsened, and the doctors decided to sedate you. Did you think that you would recover, that you would stay alive?
No, I actually, in some point, they woke me up 18 days after they medically induced me into coma. And 18 days later, I was up for a few hours, and then the doctors told me, you have to go back into a coma because we need to intubate you again. Your situation is much worse. And I was sure this is my last chance to say goodbye to my family, and that's what I did. And I sent messages to the volunteers of Hatzalah worldwide, United Hatzalah. I asked the supporters to continue supporting this organization because I was sure that my chances are very, very low. And actually, my chances were very, very low.
All right, well, first of all, we're very happy that you woke up and that you're feeling much better now. But after you woke up, what was the most exciting thing that your friends and family told you? I heard in an early conversation with you that the thing that most excited you was to hear about soldiers who were here in Israel during the coronavirus.
Yeah, I didn't realize what was going on around me. The world shut down while I was in a coma, and they were fighting for my life while hundreds of thousands of people were doing good deeds and praying for me. So when I woke up, I was totally depressed when I heard Passover was over, and I didn't spend it with my family, which I usually do every year. I always do it every year with family. I was very depressed. So I asked one of my people in Israel, could you please share with me something good that happened that I could have the strength of waking up? And they told me an incredible story. Someone called United Hatzalah for help in the dispatch right before the holiday. And he said, it was a woman, that old lady said, I need candles for the holiday. I don't have. It was like 5 minutes before the holiday of Passover came in. And a volunteer from Jaffa, an Arab volunteer, jumped on an ambucycle, one of these motorcycles that we have spread all around Israel, and drove to the supermarket, bought her the candles and a bouquet of flowers, and drove over to Bat Yam, which is a city nearby, walked over to her, her top floor, and when she opened the door, he gave her the flowers and the candles, and she gave him such a hug because she was so happy to see a paramedic come over and give her candles and flowers. And when he saw her hand, she had a number right here, and she was a Holocaust survivor. And this was something very, very special for him. And when I heard this story, I said, wow, you know what? I need to get well. I need to come back on my feet. I know I have a long process to go through the physiotherapy, but I'm going to get back there and continue saving lives with my people.
Thank you so much for being with us. It was an honor. I'm glad you're feeling better. Thank you again.
Thank you, and hope everyone's well.
All right. On a related note, everyone is waiting for the official word that the major threats from coronavirus are over and that we can get back to our normal lives, especially those looking to travel. Until a vaccine is tested and released, though, such hopes remain frozen. But that said, scientists are working around the clock to find a successful vaccine. The latest development, an Israeli lab successfully completing lab tests in rodents. The Defense Ministry-run Israel Institute for Biological Research is saying that it's one step closer to human trials. Next, however, is testing on other animals. This news coming just weeks after IIBR confirming that an antibody for COVID-19 had been isolated too. Antibodies would be more beneficial for treating those who've already contracted the disease, though. Inoculation is needed to prevent infection in the first place. So as for a vaccine, there are about a dozen research groups around the world entering early-stage human trials, but there's no way to know which, if any, will be successful, and it typically takes between a year and 18 months to complete a vaccination. IIBR, on the other hand, believing they may be finished within a year or even less. Now, this next idea will sound like science fiction, but that's reality. A small 3-inch device can determine within a minute whether you are infected with coronavirus or not. And we are in the studio with Professor Gabi Seroussi, Deputy Head of Research at the School of Electrical Engineering and Computers and a faculty member at the Department of Electrical Optics at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, who has developed a breathing test to detect COVID-19. Now, you brought this device with you today, and I'm really excited to hear about it because it looks to me like a whistle. Can you tell us more about this device and how it works?
Well, it's not only a whistle, but it can do other functions as well. So basically, the kit itself that will be provided for passenger that will go into the terminal of airport and so on will contain only 2 parts. This is the capsule, and this is the mouthpiece. We are going to attach the mouthpiece to the capsule. Then we're going to blow into the mouthpiece 3 times, open it, put it in the machine, which looks like an X-ray machine in the airport, the capsule, and within about 20 seconds of scanning this capsule, we will get the results. So
this is going to allow us to basically get back into the air and start traveling.
Hopefully you can cross your finger for this, but right. I believe that we're good.
Okay, so how does it compare to other products on the market, other test kits on the market in terms of its efficacy rate?
Yeah, okay, so we had a clinical trial, and we are still on a clinical trial right now. We already tested something like 150 individuals, those who have coronavirus and without as a control group, and we found a matching to the PCR test that we're taking in parallel by about 90%. Okay?
Wow.
So, and of course we have the efficiency that we can do it within 1 minute, unlike PCR, which take 8 hours, day or 2 days.
Well, and how did you accomplish this with a breath test with that device that is that small, as opposed to the nasal swabs and all these major operations that we've been seeing?
Okay, there is a big difference between the 2 measurements. The swab are taken in the point of care. Namely, you have to take the swab, you go to the point of care, put it in some kind of quite complicated instrument, and then after 8 hours, 10 hours, you will get the result. Our concept is to go to the point of entries, namely airports, namely cruise ships, namely big companies, army bases, and so on, that the people are valuable there, and actually the organization is willing to pay for this kind of test in order to have them on board. So basically, those places, we are coming with a breathalyzer type of device, that this is the only way that you can do it on the spot. You don't have to go to a class 3 biology laboratory.
All right, well, I'm so excited for this product. I can't wait to see it on the market. Good luck to you and this amazing product. Professor, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
All right. In other news, a murder conviction handed down today for a West Bank settler in an Israeli court this morning. This over the firebombing murder of 3 members of a Palestinian family in 2015. Tracy Alexander has the story.
Head bowed, West Bank settler Amiram Ben Uliel is led into court, where today he faces a conviction of 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of arson. 5 years after this, masked men breaking into the Dewabshe family home in the West Bank town of Duma in 2015, throwing a Molotov cocktail inside, killing 18-month-old Ali Dewabshe and his parents, Saad and Reham. A family and community in mourning, waiting half a decade for this day. Ben Uliel's sentencing is set for June 9. Ben Uliel confessing to the crime for the third time after the first two were ruled inadmissible because they'd been extracted by physical force. The incident against him claims that Ben Uliel's motive was revenge for the murder of Malachi Rosenfeld by a Palestinian in a drive-by shooting a month earlier near the town of Duma. The court acquitting him on charges of membership in a terror organisation. Ben Uliel's lawyer is vowing to appeal the Supreme Court.
Now there's a shock about turn after the death of Chinese ambassador to Israel Du Wei. A Chinese delegation was set to begin a probe into the incident tomorrow. But just hours after initial reports, Chinese officials saying they accept the Israeli paramedics' assessment and are canceling their investigations. The 57-year-old Wei, discovered by aides in his Herzliya home Sunday morning, not breathing, and his body is now being prepared to be sent back to China for burial. Israeli Magen David Adom paramedics declaring his death due to heart failure. Wei is survived by his wife and son, neither of whom live in Israel. And it's only May, but Israel is sizzling through yet another scorcher today. And it's only May, but Israel is sizzling through yet another scorcher today. The country could be facing its longest and most extreme heat wave ever recorded this week. Temperatures are set to sit consistently around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 40 degrees Celsius for about 6 days. In Eilat, Israel's most southern coastal city, they're in store for a high of 113 degrees Celsius, that's 45 degrees Celsius today. The population is clearly blasting the AC as a result. Israel's electric corporation recording the country's highest amount of electricity use in May ever at 1:30 p.m. Sunday. Now, the concept of home has taken on a very new meaning as people around the world are still stuck in lockdowns. But an incredible new online collaboration is reclaiming the word and taking the internet by storm. ILTV's Nittany Manson has the scoop. Listen close.
Just under 100 vocalists and musicians from around the world participating from their homes in this mind-blowingly gorgeous and multi-language rendition of Home, written by Drew Pearson and Greg Holden, and made popular in 2012 by American Idol winner Philip Phillips. Among the performers, Hamilton stars Joanna Jones and Ari Afsar, famous Israeli singer-songwriters Achinoam Nini, David Broza, and Miri Awad, and the JYC, or Jerusalem Youth Chorus, which organized and released the video. Now, this video took the JYC 6 weeks to produce, including a 10-minute behind-the-scenes look, but it was worth it. Reactions to the video exceeding expectations, and participants left proud, calling this one of the strongest examples of how making music and striving for peace can influence the world to stand together.
Stay safe, everyone. We're all in the same boat.
Bye.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. It's time to whip out the fans and the mini pools because it's going to be hot. Tonight you can expect clear skies and a low of 77 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 25 Celsius tonight. And then tomorrow, as the heat wave continues, highs will sit at around 102 degrees Fahrenheit or 39 degrees Celsius. So again, drink lots of water, avoid unnecessary exercise outside, and if you see anything melting that normally shouldn't, send us a pic. And now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. This is my new ringtone. This is the best drumming I think I've ever seen. Yeah, definitely gonna be my new ringtone. All right, but that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.52 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.